Mondays, episode number 6. On today's topic, we're actually going to be hitting on time management. Starting to get some traction with these things, so starting to get a lot of good feedback with these Make It Happen Mondays. And so keep the questions coming and help me promote here, and hopefully you get some value out of this one too. Again, today's topic is going to be about time management because in all the trainings I do, that's what I always start my trainings like, hey, what do you want to get out of this? What are some of the challenges and that type of thing that you're faced with? And inevitably, time management comes up at least 4 or 5 times. Like, hey, John, I'm just so busy and all this other stuff. So, I've gone to the time management classes. I've read some of the books, read some of the blogs too, and I do teach a little bit on time management. But there's no secret bullet to it, right? There's no silver bullet to it. It's just more about being organized, right? And I think the thing with time management, everybody says I'm so busy, I have so much stuff to do, and that's bullshit. I mean, ultimately, it's not because we're that busy. It's just because we're unorganized. As an example, I always used to use the excuse that working out, right? I know I should work out. I don't like working out, but I know I should. But my excuse has always been, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. I travel every week, and this, that, and the other thing. I can't do it. And I remember about 8 years ago or so, and I don't care what your political affiliation was, but I remember Obama was running for presidency. And I was watching some special on him or whatever it is. They come to find out that every morning while he was running for the president of the United States of America, every morning he would get up and he would go to the gym for an hour and work out. And when I watched that, I was like, yeah, I think my whole excuse about being too busy to work out is pretty much crap because I don't think I'm that busy, right? I mean, the person running for the presidency of the United States of America is probably a little bit busier than me. So I just knew my excuse was bullshit, and that's what it was. It was an excuse. That's again, for all of us, it's not that we have too much stuff to do, it's we do it all over, we're all over the place in what we do. All right, so I'm going to talk today about a couple of things, right? The primary components of effective time management are goal setting, prioritization, and focus. If you can set good goals, prioritize those goals, and focus for a period of time, time management actually becomes quite manageable. And so that's where it starts, right? Is the goals. If you'll notice on the back there, I don't see my whiteboard right there. I write down 3 goals every single morning of what I want to get accomplished that day. And by the way, they ultimately drive to a ultimate goal of where I want to be in a few years or whatever that is. But daily, we need to be setting goals. Because I'm a shiny object guy, right? You bring something up and I'm like, ooh, look over there, right? If I don't have something that guides me of what I need to accomplish that day, I'll be all over the place. Right? And so that's where it starts, right? I write down 3 goals, and they got to be SMART too, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. You can't set a goal or shouldn't set a goal if I want to get better, right? Or like, how could you possibly measure that? Or something like, here's 2 ways to set a goal as an example. I want to get in shape. Or I want to be 185 pounds, cut up benching 225 by May 5th, 2007. What's a better goal? Obviously the other one, right? What's the best shape I've ever been in my life? May 5th, 2007. Why? Because I was getting married and I was going to be by a pool and all sorts of crazy stuff, and I wanted to be 185 pounds, cut up benching 225 by May 5th, and damn, I got there, right? Ever since then, I've wanted to get in shape. So I don't exactly go to the beach all that often anymore. But anyways, my point is, you write down those goals. It keeps you focused. And I'm talking about writing down goals, not every day, not even every day, but literally for every meeting. Like every meeting you're about to walk into, what's your goal? Right? Y'all like crossing stuff off a list, right? Something oddly satisfying about crossing something off a list, no matter how mundane it might be, right? Woke up this morning, check, put on my pants, check, that type of stuff. Make yourself feel good. Write down goals, check them off, all right? And do it daily, because that's what keeps you focused. And then just try to, again, goal setting, prioritization, like what are those really the most important things you need to get accomplished that day, and then focus, right? Because focus is actually the biggest key to time management. You tell me, here's an example. You tell me you're a good multitasker, I'm going to tell you you're very inefficient in what you do. There's actually a book called The Myth of Multitasking. It talks about how the brain can't focus on more than one thing at the same time. It talks about your body can do a bunch of things at the same time, but your brain can't. It's called task switching. And it just switches tasks so fast that you don't recognize it. But the problem is every time your brain switches a task, it loses time. So therefore, the more tasks you do, the more time you lose, right? So that's why focus is a critical factor here. Like for instance, why does procrastination work? Right? Think about procrastination. Go back to our college days or whatever it is, and say you were in the, you knew you had a final coming up. So you had a final coming up in 30 days. You knew 30 days in advance you had a final coming up. Did you sit there and study for 29 straight days, right? And really diligent, grab a chapter every single day or whatever it was? Or did you rip it up for 29 straight days, drink your face off, and with about a day left to go before the final, you just sat there and said, oh crap, I got to study. And when you made that realization, oh, I have to study, did you sit in your dorm room with the windows open, music playing, people walking in and out? Or did you go find the deepest, darkest section of the library, lock yourself in a room, wipe everything off the table, and just focus on that book, right? And it worked, right? Well, you're here. So the reason that works is because the brain's an amazing thing when it can focus on something. It's not so great when you're asking it to do too many things, all right? So that's why I personally own my calendar. Right? One of the things that I've gotten very, very specific about is I own my calendar. If it's on my calendar, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. All right. So that's why one of the things that I don't miss, I work out of my house here. I miss the I miss the office environment because I miss the collaboration. I miss being around people, that type of stuff. But what I don't miss is how horribly inefficient people's time is and how much nobody really respects anybody else's time either. Meetings always start late. They end late. There's really no purpose to them. Almost every meeting that I was ever in the office, I was like, I really only need to be in here for about 10, 15 minutes. Same thing. People would just end up coming over to your cube or your desk and interrupting you mid whatever you're doing. Is, hey, I got a question for you, and that throws you off. Because that's why that focus, it's about momentum too, right? The more you do something all specifically at the same time, the more momentum and the better you get at it. And there's something I read out there recently that said, if you're doing something, if you're focused on something and you're doing it and you stop doing it, it takes a minimum of 12 minutes for you to get back to where you were. So as an example, say you're making cold calls, right? And you're making your calls, you make, the first couple, 2, 3, 4, a little rough or whatever it is. But then all of a sudden, you get a phone call, you kind of catch that groove. And then all of a sudden you get on the phone with somebody and you have a decent conversation with them and they say, send me information. And so most of us, what we'll do is we'll stop everything we're doing. We write this nice custom piece of information, like it's the only one I've ever sent before in my life, and fire it off there. And then because we kind of felt like we did something, we'll kind of get up, stretch out a little bit, go, warm up the coffee. Hey, did you see the game last night? And then when we come back, now we've crushed our momentum. So now, again, it's going to take us a minimum of 12 minutes to get back on track to where we were. So for instance, I do things in hour chunks. My biggest recommendation for you is to do things in hour chunks. Do an hour's worth of this activity, then an hour's worth of that activity. And so for instance, when I'm making cold calls, I'm not making cold calls. Like if you by the way, I'm going to tie this into making calls too, because a lot of people say, John, why should I even make phone calls or leave voicemails? Nobody even calls me back. I do make calls for one specific reason because, I leave voicemails for one specific reason. And it's because when I leave voicemails, my email response rates go up pretty drastically. But when making those phone calls, most of us just 2 or 3 phone calls and then send some emails, that type of thing. That's where I think it's a waste of time. Where I know phone can be effective is if you hyper focus on one for an hour and not just making calls during that hour, but making calls into one very specific persona for an hour. All right. So for instance, I'm going to call every VP of sales in the SaaS industry under 25 million that uses Salesforce. And I'm going to say the same damn thing over and over and over again. And I'm going to come up with my questions. I think I've talked about this before. Come up with my questions. Maybe I have a case study. And I usually do about a half-hour prep for a 1-hour call blitz. So during that half-hour prep, I'm getting my names, I'm getting my numbers, I'm getting my personas and my messaging all ready. So when I make those calls, I'm not searching for information. I'm not doing research. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I'm just hammering through calls. And if you do that, you can bang out probably, $20, $25 an hour, no problem. And so for those of you who say, hey, John, $50, some people still have that $50 a day. That's the metrics that they're under. Their managers say you got to make $50. I think 50 is around the threshold where it's still kind of reasonable. But I'll tell you, making $50 throughout the day, that's a hard thing to do. Usually I get to the end of the day, if my mentality is, I'll make a few here, a few there, I can't get to 50 by the end of the day. But if I do an hour half hour prep, 1 hour call blitz, I can bang out 20, 25, no problem. That's an hour and a half in the morning, an hour and a half in the afternoon. I'm good. That's 3 hours out of my day. I got 5 hours left to do whatever I want with. All right. So it's the same thing with like send me information. I send all my information at the end of the day. You know why? Because I could get really efficient with sending all my information at the same time. I do all my research from my accounts at the same time. So I have a research block where for an hour I just do research because I can get really efficient with doing research. Right? Here's a tip for you. When I'm going to talk probably one of these about customized emails and how to, have reasons and do research on people, stuff like that. Well, I used to have I still do, a spreadsheet. I used to use a lot more when I was doing a lot, where it's just a simple spreadsheet with all my top tier accounts, that their company's name in one column, company's website in another column, the name of the target person that I want to go after in another column, and then their email address, and their LinkedIn profile ideally, right? So I have that in a spreadsheet. And then what I do is when I'm researching, sometimes I'll just do this on the weekends, while I'm watching something stupid on TV and not paying too much attention. I just poke around somebody's website and look for reasons, right? Ooh, they open up a new office, they launched a new product, like all these different things. I'll put all that stuff on there, and so that because I can get real efficient with that. And then when I sit down to actually come up with my contact strategy, now all those reasons are there. All right. And that's one of the last points I'll make on this is, time management. A lot of us, I'll say it, the thing that I struggle with the most right now with out there training and out there listening to the challenges that people have and stuff like that is time. I'm sorry, it's not time. It's work ethic. So many people I go to companies right now, and if I go to meet an executive at 4 or 5, 5 o'clock, and I walk into the office, a lot of these offices are ghost towns. I mean, for me, like, I can't imagine, like, just being like, all right, I got to get out of here at 5 o'clock. If you care about what you do, you work as long as it takes to get the job done. And if you have goals, you can justify it, right? I actually had a kid this week come up to me, and he was talking to me about, John, I just got married, and, I got a wife, and we're trying to figure out, and she's kind of, I want to do my thing, and I'm working on stuff here, and I'm working my ass off, but, we got to be on the same page, right? And my wife's a little frustrated because I'm traveling a lot and all these, any suggestion? You travel all the time. How do you balance that with your wife? Thankfully for me, my wife actually did a lot of traveling before we even got together, and she was actually traveling more than I did early on. Now she doesn't travel as much, so she understands it. But I think the one thing that really helped was sitting down and mapping out where we wanted to be, right? Like, what are your goals? That question that people ask, like, hey, where do you want to be in 5 years, that manager, right? Like, when you're interviewing. And I always used to think that was a bullshit question, but now it's pretty important to me. And it's not necessarily where you want to be in 5 years with your existing company. I mean, in your life. Like, what kind of lifestyle do you want to be living? What kind of car do you want to be driving? What kind of job, what kind of money do you want to make? Those type of things. And it's a lifestyle thing, right? We work so that we can support a lifestyle, hopefully, right? That's why I work as hard as I do, because I want to live a certain lifestyle. Like, I want to go on nice vacations. I want to stay at nice places and shit like that. I want to, I want my daughter to have the opportunities and my wife to have the opportunity. That's why I bust my ass, right? But if you're not goal driven, let's put it this way, you're just along for the ride. Like, if you're not writing down goals about where you want to be and what you want to do, you're just along for the ride. You're letting somebody else dictate the path, right? If you write goals, you can start to dictate that path. If you read any one of the books out there, like any one of the books on successful people, right? There's Think and Grow Rich, there's, there's 10X, there's all these different books out there. Like, every single one of them is just about goal setting. The most successful people on the planet write down a goal and say, this is what I'm doing. I don't care what anybody says. And that's really what helps you deal with whatever you're going through right now. So, for instance, like, if you're in a shit job, say you just your job sucks, right? Or you don't like it for whatever reason. If you don't have a goal about what you're trying to accomplish, and if this doesn't fit into that goal, then yeah, it's going to suck. And you know what? You're going to go find another job doing something similar, and you're probably not going to like that either. But if you write down, say, okay, in 5 years, I want to be driving this kind of car, I want to be making this kind of money, this type of lifestyle, whatever it is. Again, SMART, write them down. And then you drive towards that, you can deal with a lot of shit as long as it's supporting that goal. Like I could eat a shit sandwich as long as I'm driving towards a specific goal that I'm faced with, right? But if I don't, if I'm just going through the motions and looking at it like every day I got to do this without really thinking about where I want to go, it makes it a lot more difficult, right, to deal with that shit. So, I guess that's really where it comes from. Like that, that kid talked to me this week or last week about, his challenges. I was like, dude, just sit down with your girl and map out like where do you guys want to be? Let's talk about the next 5 years and where we want to be and get alignment with that. Because if you don't have alignment with that, then yeah, she or he is going to be pretty upset when you don't come home, when you're working late, when you're traveling or whatever. But if it's moving you towards a goal, you should be able to work it out, all right? And that's where it comes down to time management, right? Is like I said earlier, goal setting, prioritization, and focus. You set good goals, prioritize those goals, and then focus on them for a period of time. You start to figure it out a lot more. So to wrap things up, because in time management, I don't know if there's any questions out there right now, but to wrap things up on this one, I do have to actually, speaking of time management, I got to bail a little bit early on this one because I got a 1 o'clock call that I have to take and I have to do a little bit of prep for. But own your calendar. Write down goals every day. Well, back up. 5 years out. Write that down. All right? Money, lifestyle. Again, lifestyle goals. Back into that from a work standpoint. Okay, to live that lifestyle, how much money do I need to be making? Right? And therefore, from there, you can say, okay, well, then what do I need to do to be able to make that money? What steps do I need to be able to take to be able to get there? Right? Now, does that mean you keep working at another organization? Does that mean you go off on your own? I don't know, right? Whatever. And then back that down into daily. Right? What do I need to do every single day to be able to put myself in a position where I can stay focused on those goals? Because when I got that up there, see that picture right there? That's me, actually. I did a cross-country trip when I was freaking out one day. Sorry, I got something on my screen. Back when I was my first startup, I was working so hard. I almost had a mental breakdown, and so I just freaked, and I just jumped in my car and drove cross country, and with a buddy of mine, and that's in Utah, and I was standing up on that rock, being like, I'm free. I felt a lot better at that point because my stresses had gone away, and above that, notice that number. It looks like it's backwards on this, but that's $1 million in ARR. That's my goal. I want to hit $1 million in recurring revenue for myself because that is going to put me in a position to live the life I want to live, for my daughter to have the opportunities that she has, and for my wife to be able to do what she wants to do, right? And everything drives me towards that main goal, right? I had it for a specific date. I pushed a little hard. I was trying to hit 40. I'm 41 now, so I missed it by a little bit. But I'm at the revenue number, but I just need to figure out the recurring piece of this. And so that's what all my decisions are towards that, right? When I spend money, I'll spend a ton of money to get me to that goal if it's going to get me there. And then you'll notice on a daily basis what I need. That's the year, and then there's 2017 above that, and then that's the day of what I want to get accomplished. It just keeps me motivated. All right. So if you got questions, hit me up. All right. I'm gonna bail now. It doesn't look like too many people have questions today. So again, if you're getting value out of this, do me a favor, help spread the word. It's Jay Barrows Facebook page. Also hit me up on Snapchat, John M as in Michael Barrows, where I answer any questions. A lot of you hit me up on Snapchat a lot, so I answer questions every day, all day on Snapchat. And then you can always email me, john@jbarrows, and I'm happy to jump on a call with anybody if anybody's looking for some advice or just some direction or whatever it is. I'm happy to help. All right, cool. All right, everybody. Well, it's been a pleasure. Make it a great week. All right, write some goals down this week. Do something you're gonna crush, and then just go for it. All right, make it a great week. Make it happen. Thanks.